fun laugh. It is 6:31. I will go ahead and call the Village of Essex Junction Board of Trustees meeting to order for October 13th. Thank you all for being here tonight. And as we go into the agenda, are there any agenda additions or changes tonight?
Sarah?
Yeah, I think we had a couple of additional handouts that came through this afternoon. So you should be seeing on your screen, there was the PowerPoint presentation for this evening, or for, actually, I think someone just took control of my screen. I think I just stole it back. But there is the PowerPoint presentation for tonight's public hearing. And then we have 2 additional documents to accompany the chief's presentation under business, and those were emailed to the trustees this evening, and I'll have them to display and we'll publish them as well. So that's that.
Thank you, Sarah. Trustees, any agenda additions or changes tonight? All right. If somebody would like to make a motion to accept the additions or the amended agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, George. And is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. And we've approved the agenda. Now, before we go into the public hearing, just a little bit of a housekeeping item. When we go through the public hearing, there will be opportunities for public comment after the presentation. So I kindly ask for members of the public to hold off on questions until after I've gone through the presentation. When we get to that point, I will go through the instructions in terms of how to ask to speak to the board. And then after the public hearing, we will get back onto the regular agenda, which will include public comment on things not on the agenda. So with that, I will go ahead and call the public hearing to order to consider the plan for merger for the town of Essex and Village of Essex Junction. And if you will bear with me for a moment while I get this presentation up. I assume you can see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I started at the end. You're all welcome.
And Andrew, there's a little screen actually with my face on it. If you could just minimize that too.
You don't want to see that?
I mean, it would just help for people to see the whole screen. Thanks.
Thank you. So again, this is a public hearing for the merger charter and the merger vote that is happening now with mailed-in ballots. And so one thing I wanted to start off with is to manage expectations on what this public hearing is, in that this is an overview of the merger. This is not going to go over every single detail. If you'd like to know some specifics, please feel free to ask during the question and answer portion at the end of the presentation. Also, please feel free after the meeting or otherwise to please email any of the trustees, as we would be more than happy to help answer questions. Additionally, I want to point out the village's official merger website, which will have even more information than what I am providing here. Also, I'm not going to read everything on the slides, so just in the sake of time, I'm only going to provide the high-level overview of the slides. These slides are on the village's website should you want to refer back to them. So one of the questions is, how did we get here? Well, this charter that we are proposing in this vote that is being proposed is a 7+ year collaboration between the town and the village. Along collaboration and integration started back in early of 2013 and has progressed quite well in terms of having a shared services reports, a unified manager, integration of various departments, so on and so forth, until the governance subcommittee began work on a charter, which then subsequently both boards both the select board and the trustees worked on, and what is being proposed is a charter that the trustees have approved of to go out to vote for the village. This governance subcommittee was comprised to identify and answer the financial and legal questions about merger. In 2020, the elected boards of the government collaborated on the recommendations to create a new charter. And so what you're seeing again, or what village residents are voting on, is the village trustees version of this charter. There were, of course, some challenges with this, integrating the town and village operating budgets without an unacceptable increase in the town outside the village taxes, plus a representation model that balances the various viewpoints that exist. One thing merger will do is it will equalize town and village taxes, and it won't all at once. Reasons for this are that the average village taxpayer pays about $925 in municipal property taxes above what the town outside the village resident pays. All village residences and businesses are taxed by the town to pay for town services, but town residents and businesses are not taxed by the village to pay for village services. And merger will equalize the taxing and spending throughout the community, but doing so at one point in time would cause a one-time $350 increase to the average residential property tax in the town in one day. And so to lessen this impact, we, in working with the select board, agreed to phase that in over a 12-year period of time with a pay down of the village's debt. There are two significant transitional periods. Within the first 5 years, there's a 7-member elected board that has balanced representation for the village and the town outside of the village. They will be tasked with reorganizing town and village departments, codes, municipal plans, and policies. Within the first year, the interim board is tasked with aligning of ordinances, so that's why that part is not in here. The alignment of ordinances is supposed to happen within the first year if the merger for the village and the town are both approved. And within the first 5 years, there will be a special study commission to look at the composition of voting wards and to recommend any needed changes. And within the first 12 years, so again, those two transitional periods, so within the first 12 years, the village will pay off the one debt that we have outstanding, or the one loan that we have outstanding. During that point in time, village and town tax rates will gradually be equalized. Village taxes will go down by approximately $35 per year, each and every year. Town taxes will increase about $25 each and every year. And this 12-year phase-in also would allow for any grand list and consolidation efficiencies to offset the tax impacts. So during this first 12 years of merger, the village will be designated as a debt assessment district to pay off the village debt that was not incurred by town outside village residents. So in the village, we voted for a bond and or a loan, and that loan will stay with the village. That loan will be paid off by the village, and that is one of the reasons for this 12-year transition period. The village will also be designated as a tax reconciliation district for integrating the village general fund into the town general fund. And again, that average tax change for the village would be estimated about 35 years each and every year decrease for 12 years. And the town outside the village residents on average would see a $25 per year increase each and every year. There are some additional elements to that 12-year phase-in period as a way to help reduce the tax burden or the tax increase for those who don't live in the village. One of which is a sidewalk district. Given the maintenance that we have, the day-to-day maintenance on our sidewalks, being much more aggressive than in the town outside the village, the village residents will continue to pay for that for 12 years. The village will also be designated as a capital improvement district. That will keep a small portion of the infrastructure expenditures separate from the town budget. And then lastly, the village center / Five Corners area is going to continue to be designated as a downtown improvement district and will retain all state designations to help facilitate ongoing and anticipated rebuilding and revitalization projects. So in this charter, we are proposing 2 wards, Ward 1 and Ward 2. Ward 1 being those individuals who don't live in the village, Ward 2 being those residents who do live in the village. This will give all residents the assurance that their part of the community will be adequately represented in the new government, and then the ward boundary lines can be adjusted in the future to account for variations in population growth, which will also be important come 2022, I believe it is, when the census data, or 2021, when the census data becomes available, and as a part of that special commission I had mentioned before. We are proposing a 7-member board And when I say we're proposing, we have approved of a 7-member board to be put on the charter. So one thing I want to also be clear on is things within this village charter cannot be changed. It has already gone out to vote. So I just want individuals to keep that in mind tonight. So with the 7-member board, we use an odd number board because it avoids deadlock and complies with the guidance of the Vermont Legislative Committee that oversees municipal charters. There will be 3 village, if you will, and 3 town outside the village seats to again give the assurances that both parts will be represented fairly. There will be 1 individual who would be at large. So anybody in either the town outside the village or the village could run for that seat and would be elected by everybody within both wards. Some other important features of the merger plan. This merger plan includes Australian ballot for voting on the municipal budget. Australian ballot is a phrase that we use to say voting for the budget on a piece of paper in private, very similar to, or the exact process as what we do for the school district, and the same way we elect select board members, trustees, the president, vice president, and so on and so forth. The annual meeting would become an informational meeting. The name of the new community would just simply be Essex. Essex Junction would remain as an unincorporated village in the same ways in which White River Junction is an unincorporated village in the town of Hartford. There's been some confusion on that, and one thing I just want to make sure that people understand is if we were to drive down Interstate 89 and you see the highway signs for White River Junction is not an actual town. It is not a village. It is an unincorporated village. And so Essex Junction and the village of Essex Junction would still exist in that same capacity. Current town and village water sewer rates would not be affected by a merger. The water sewer costs, including repairs, are paid by those who use them, not property taxes. The new Essex town will own the Essex Junction wastewater treatment plant, which is one of the safest, most efficient, up-to-date facilities of its kind in Vermont. So what if the village votes against the merger? Well, frankly, we would look for feedback from residents on what we should do next. And the village and town governments and all the services that are provided would continue as they are. And the select board has indicated that they are going to be moving forward with their charter in March to align with town meeting day. But that is a decision that is up to the select board. So how do residents vote? Well, you should have received a mail-in ballot by now. If you haven't, you should contact the town clerk. The email address and phone number are at the bottom of the presentation. If you complete that ballot and mail it back, please do so before October 24th. You can always hand deliver it to the box that's located outside of 81 Main Street. Please do so before November 3rd. Or you can hand deliver it on November 3rd to Essex High School. That is the voting place for the village. If you'd like to vote in person, you still can. You can go to the Essex High School again on November 3rd. You can vote in person the same way that many of us have in the past. We just ask that you wear a mask for health and safety purposes. And if you have additional questions, again, please refer to the Essex Junction website. There's many more details there. You can also contact any of us trustees. We'd be more than happy to answer your questions. And so with that, I will figure out how to turn this presentation back over at some other point in time. There we go. And so if you have questions, since this is a public hearing, we absolutely will allow for time for the public to ask us questions. To do so, if you are using Microsoft Teams, towards the top of your screen, you can raise your hand. That will inform me that you'd like to speak. You can use the conversation tab as well. And with that, you can type in that you would like to speak. If you are not using Microsoft Teams and you are calling in, I ask that you state your full name, your first and last name, so that we know you would like to speak. And so what I will do is I will pause for a few individuals to go ahead and let us know that they would like to speak. And we will take it from there. And if there seems to be an overwhelming request for speakers, I may limit the time of each individual and the capability to speak, just to again make sure that we're able to get through the meeting tonight. So go ahead if you would like to ask a question. If you want something clarified, please go ahead and raise your hand, type in the chat, or go ahead and speak up. So I see there's an individual named Dave. Dave, if you can go ahead, you can unmute yourself. I would kindly ask that you state your first and last name for the minutes so that way we know who you are, and then go ahead and ask your question. Dave, if you would like to speak, you can go ahead and do so. Your hand is raised. If you don't want your hand raised, you can go ahead and click on that hand button again and it will lower your hand. Okay, Dave, maybe you can try again later on. Was there anybody else who wished to ask a question during the public hearing on the merger? Go ahead, Evan.
I just wanted to provide one clarification for the people watching. Because of the way the state mailed out the November 3rd ballot early, we are seeing people return their second ballot, which is the merger ballot, to the town clerk's office. They are not duplicate ballots. They are your merger ballot. So for those watching, if you got a second envelope that looks like the first one, only thinner, it's not a duplicate. You don't have to worry about it. Open it. If it just has the merger in it, great. If it actually ends up being a duplicate ballot, then you can send it back to the clerk's office. But the only thing that's going to occur now in the next couple of days is if you do send us back that ballot, we're going to try to send it back to you with a note that says this is not a duplicate. So just a note on that and on that process that's going on that just popped up in the last couple of days.
Thank you, Evan. And so again, just to remind everybody, that envelope that you received the village's ballot on does look exactly the same as the one that was mailed out that has our federal elections. So that is intentional and that is correct. So we've given a fair amount of time here to ask for questions. Diane Clemens, I see that your hand is up. Why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Okay, I would like to make a note that the polling place for villagers is indeed Essex High School. Everyone who wants to vote should, per school requirements, will wear a mask to enter. Should someone choose not to wear a mask, they can still vote, but they will have to have assistance from one of the poll workers to do it outside the building. If you will please make a note in further communications with the public that masks are indeed required on school property. That would be helpful to all of the citizens of our community.
Thank you, Diane. So to summarize and for clarity, yes, so masks are required if you vote in person on November 3rd at Essex High School. Wear a mask, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you can't wear a mask, then as Diane had mentioned, a poll worker will help you to vote outside of the school building. Unless there are any other questions, we can move on from the public hearing. So I will make this the last call for questions on the public hearing. All right, seeing no other questions, hearing nobody else ask to speak, I will go ahead and close the public hearing for this item. And that will bring us on to the next agenda item, which is the public to be heard. So this is a portion of the meeting in which if there is something that someone from the public would like to speak to the board about that is not on the agenda, now is the time to do so. So again, the way that this will work is you can raise your hand and or type in the chat that you would like to speak to the boards about something. If you are using the phone, please go ahead and just state your first and last name so that we know who you are. And I will go ahead and pause for a few moments to allow those members from the public to identify that they would like to speak tonight. And out of curiosity, Diane, is your hand up a holdover from the previous item, or is there something else that you wanted to mention? Thank you, Diane. Given the 15 seconds of awkward silence and nobody raising their hand or asking to speak, we can go ahead and I feel safely assume that nobody wished to speak to the board about something that is not on the agenda. So given that, let's jump into item 6A, a discussion with Essex Police Chief about traffic enforcement, police staffing, and other police department priorities. And we welcome,
Oh, I'm so sorry, Andrew.
I was just going to say, and we welcome Chief Hogue here with us tonight.
Good evening.
Ron, if you would like something in particular displayed on the screen, just holler and I'll make it happen.
Sure, that's fine. Thanks, Sarah. I wanted to come and speak to you tonight. I know that I was requested to meet with you all to talk about traffic enforcement and where we're at with staffing in the police department. So I just wanted to begin by saying that traffic enforcement to me is near and dear. I have been involved in traffic enforcement for a great deal of my 29 years, including assigned to a traffic enforcement unit in Florida. So traffic to me, like I said, holds a spot in my heart. Because I feel that it is one of the most important areas that the police department can be involved in, and a spot that we can really make a difference when it comes to saving lives. And really that's what it's about is crash reduction and saving lives. So I will start with the sheet that I sent you all in the reading file, and Sarah, if you want to just pull that up real quick. So just as I had our records department put that together, and I at the bottom I had her separate out Maple Street, because I think that's really where this started, where there was a complaint from a gentleman that lives on Maple Street about traffic. So I wanted to see the numbers of what we'd been doing there over the past 5 years, and so that's why we separated that out. I also, wanted to look at the comparison between the village and the town. And I also wanted to look and see what we had done year to year over the past 5 years. So as you'll see in those numbers, so I included crash numbers and also tickets and warnings. And we can show a lot about what we do by showing numbers like that. They don't show everything that we do, obviously, but I think just looking at those numbers, you can see that, and I noted this in the memo that I sent as well. So when I got here in July of 2018, I'll be honest that there was a general perception, I think, outside of Essex that there wasn't a lot of traffic enforcement that went on. And like I said, that being near and dear to my heart, one of the first things that I did when I got here and employed as a captain was to put a new emphasis on traffic. And that was evidenced by the numbers, as you can see, from 2018 and 2019. Our officers were out there more in the mornings and the afternoons when people were asking for traffic enforcement at the highest times of traffic. So that was part of it. The other thing that we did is we were able to transfer an officer to be a traffic enforcement officer. Specifically, that's what he was tasked with doing. And that's been a position that the Essex Police Department has had for many years. And unfortunately, in 2019, we were doing really well, and then we lost a couple of people to departures, and then we had to take that position and put it back in patrol. So up until last week, we had not had a traffic enforcement officer position. And just last week, because we had a new officer get out of training, we were able to refill that position. So as of October 5th, we currently have an officer who's dedicated to doing just traffic enforcement. So like I said, traffic complaints in the village and the town are one of the greatest complaints that we have. People are concerned about people speeding on their road, people running red lights, pedestrian violations, you name it. People see that. And it's probably, that's the most visible thing that they see from their homes. It's probably the thing that concerns them the most and makes them feel unsafe in their neighborhood, is that they see people violating the law on their roads. And we get so many of those that it's very difficult for us to address many of them. We try as best that we can, and we have to, and up until we've had a traffic enforcement officer, we've had to have the officers who were assigned to patrol do that as time allows. And of course, traffic complaints or traffic is the highest at the hours of between 6 and 8 in the morning, and also between 4 and 6 at night. Well, those are also the times that we have the most calls for service. So our officers who are assigned to patrol get called away to go and answer a call for service, and they don't get to do as much traffic enforcement as what we want. So having that traffic officer is a big benefit to us. Now, also, he's not just assigned to do enforcement. The officer is also in charge of doing education, which is another portion of the overall goal of traffic safety. So he's also going to be involved in doing safety programs for the community and making sure that we're up to speed on the latest thinking of, training folks in distracted driving and those types of public safety messages. So that's really where we're at with traffic enforcement. Like I said, I believe we've done a really good job in the last couple of years, increasing our numbers, increasing the amount of presence that we have on the streets. And then, of course, this year we have COVID. So during the month of March and the month of April and most of May, our officers were instructed to only do as if it was something that was egregious. And that was to prevent them from spreading COVID or coming in contact with someone who had COVID, because we were trying to protect our officers and save them for the most needed incidents. So our numbers sort of dropped this year, and hopefully we will be picking those back up now with a new emphasis on enforcement that we have now with a new officer being assigned to that. Is there anything that I can answer before I go into the staffing levels at the department?
I just have a couple of quick questions, if I can.
Sure.
Just your row names on the side here. If you could just let us know what TCNR, 3200, so on and so forth, what those mean.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry. I did put that in the memo, but I can't explain it. So TCNR and the codes that are there are basically from our records management system, and that every incident we have has a code, and those are what get coded out as so we can track, how many crashes that we have. So TCNR is a traffic crash non-reportable. That's basically a minor crash where there's no injuries or there's no damage that's greater than $6,000, which is our policy for an investigated crash. Then 3200 is actually a crash where there's a significant amount of damage, but there's no injuries. 3100 would be a crash where there are actually injuries involved. And then 3000 is a fatality. So as you can see in those numbers, fortunately, the Essex Junction and town haven't had a fatality since 2017. So that's a good thing. So that's basically what those mean.
Great, I appreciate that. I also do appreciate the emphasis on traffic as well, because I assume that's, well, I know personally that's one of the things that I hear the most of as well.
Absolutely.
And so certainly appreciate you stepping up to the resident concerns for sure.
Yeah, we're doing our best, and like I said, that it's a priority for the police department. We know that this is one of the greatest complaints that we have. and we're trying to address it.
My only other question is, do you have, or what is the process in which officers make the determination as to whether to issue a ticket versus a warning, or is there really anything defined?
There isn't really anything defined, and certainly we don't have a policy on that. The officers have a discretion in order to write a ticket or a warning, and it's all up to them. And honestly, in my mind, I can tell you what goes into my mind as to whether I'm going to write a ticket or a warning, and that would be, the egregiousness of the offense, the prior record of the person who we've stopped, and the area where it might have occurred. In a couple of the areas recently, in the village especially, we've had a lot of complaints in one or two areas, so we've decided, a lot of the officers will issue tickets for that, but they do not get any instructions from the police administration or anything like that as to whether they should issue warnings. That's up to the officers.
I appreciate that. And I guess now my last one. Data certainly is a great thing because it can be thought provoking. For me, it also tends to then raise other questions. At another point in time, I'd love to see if this data could be broken out by the race of those who are pulled over, and just to take a look at some of that information. Not to do that tonight, but for a future meeting.
Yeah, we do have that data. We do.
Great. And so George's hand is up first, and then Raj after George.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, Chief. It's George. Looking at the speeding on Maple Street, and I know it's a problem. I live off Maple Street, and years ago we had a similar problem with Route 15 coming into the village after the Susie Wilson intersection. It was 4 lanes coming into the village, and we had very high crash rate, high speed. And one of the things we did was we converted it to a complete street with wider bike lanes, the center turn lane. We narrowed the street, did a lot to sort of visually tip the drivers off that they were entering a congested area and they needed to slow down. Yep. And I'm wondering, I know it's a little trickier on Maple Street, and I'm not by any means asking you for a recommendation, but just get your thoughts. Do you generally think that these, in your experience, since you have quite a bit of experience, and this is something you're interested in, do you think that these things work? I mean, should we be maybe thinking of doing something similar with Maple Street, not a center turn lane, but asking the village engineer, are there things that we can do to just visually with striping and signage and everything to kind of slow the traffic down that's coming in from 117 once they get past Global Foundries? Just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I will say that engineering is one of the 3 E's of traffic safety, and engineering, enforcement, and in education. So certainly engineering a road plays a big part in the safety of that. So having the engineer take a look at the road, I will say, Maple Street is nice and wide, especially near the police department where Global Foundries is. It's nice and wide. It certainly seems like a road when you're driving it that would be faster than 25. And I'm not advocating for changing the speed limit, but I would say, maybe having the engineer take a look at that as to some of the things that we could do with different striping, or making it appear narrower, or making it appear that it's not a 35 or 40 mile an hour road might help.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Chief, thanks for joining us. It's Raj. I had another question, but I'll dovetail a little bit off what George was talking about. I live in the other end of town, right as you come off the 15 from Susie Wilson Road past Pearl Street Park. And George is right, it has improved a lot since the redesign of the road. Still a bit of a speed lane, but I have noticed an officer in that vicinity more recently, and I appreciate that. The Bike Walk Committee is always talking about speed reduction and tools and tricks and ways to engineer. It would be great to get a conversation going over the next year or two with the engineering firm we use and the police department and them to see what can be done on some of these. But I'm curious, with the numbers, do you have data, not for tonight, but for another time, just maybe as a follow-up letter, how many of these involve pedestrians or bikes?
Yep.
And I know that's probably not what you were asked for tonight, so it's no problem at all, obviously. But I'd just be curious to see if, how we're trending with pedestrians, especially, and bicyclists, if it's steady, dropped, any of that.
Sure. No, absolutely. I'm looking through my notes here, and I know I had that stat, but I believe I may not have it right with me, but I do have that stat for pedestrians.
Great. That was just what I was curious about. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other trustees have questions, or are we ready to have Chief move on to the next portion? I think we're good to go.
Okay. So just for a second about staffing, the department has authorized 32 officers, and two of those positions are frozen because of COVID. We're trying to be cautious just in case it does come back, and we have to shut down again and things don't go the way that we want them to. So right now we are at 27. We currently have two of those 27 in the academy. And they'll be graduating in, I believe it's February they graduate, and then we'll finally get them into their training in March, and then we'll probably get them working by themselves sometime in June. So that's, it takes us a while to get someone through the academy, and I know you guys have probably heard this all before. It takes a while from the hiring point to actually get the person through the academy and then out on the street where they're working by themselves and filling a hole in the schedule. Since I've been here since July of 2018, we've had 6 retirements and then 2 others who have left for other jobs, other law enforcement jobs, one to a federal job and one to his home back in Connecticut. He wanted to go back. So losing 8 people in 2 years on top of the ones that we've had before that, it's been tough to, filling those positions, but we're doing our best. We currently have I think we're looking at 6 candidates right now out of a total of 50 applications, I believe we received within the last 2 months. So we have 6 that we picked out that we're going to be going further in our process. And they will be going to take a polygraph here shortly, and then we will try to weed them down to 2 so that we can get them into the academy in February or March when the other guys graduate. So the next academy, that we'll have 2 more going. So we're holding our own when it comes to hiring. I think we're doing good. I wish we could get more into the academy. I think that would solve our problems a little faster. But we're doing okay.
Thank you. So Chief, for those who don't know the process, could you kind of go just a high-level overview of what the process is, but then also the time frame that it takes from when you post a position or first have an applicant apply to when they can actually be off on their own?
Sure. So a lot of the hiring that we do and the time frames that we deal with are based off the Vermont Police Academy. So here in Vermont, because there's only one police academy and they can only take, I believe it's a maximum of 38 students each class. So we have to work off from their schedules. So they have traditionally had an academy that started in August and then one that starts in February. And because of COVID, that got pushed back. So now they've kind of shifted that a little bit. But so we have to have names for the academy in March. We have to have had those submitted in September to be able to get slots in the next academy. So in order to do that, we have to back up another 3 months in order to start getting someone in the process. So what happens is when someone applies with us, their resume and their application gets looked at by several of our detectives and our senior leadership, and then we will pare those down to folks that we believe is going to be able to pass all of the testing. So and meet our standards. So once they get to that point, then they're called in traditionally they were called in for an interview. Now it's a phone interview and then a follow-on interview. So currently right now they will get a phone interview. We'll further screen their backgrounds, that type of thing. And then they will be brought through the process where we check backgrounds. We do a polygraph on them. We check, we have them go to the academy. They have to take a written test at the academy. They have to take a medical exam, and they have to take a psychological exam. If they pass all of that, then we will do an in-person interview where we ask them further questions and put them through some scenarios to make sure that they can make the proper decisions under stress. If they get through that, then finally they have a final interview with the chief, and then they are hired. Then they go off to the police academy, where they are tested in many different ways over the period of about 5 months. Once they graduate there, they come out, and then they are with a field training officer for approximately 3 months, 3 to 4 months, and then finally they are on their own. So from the time that a person applies to the time they're out on their own, we're looking at about 11 to 12 months before they're finally working on their own. So it's an extensive process.
It's a significant process and a significant commitment as well. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it is on both parts.
Trustees, any questions? Doesn't appear so.
So that's basically what I had. I just wanted to reassure everyone that we are doing our very best to address the traffic issues. And if folks do have problems on their street, we're encouraging them to call us or send us an email to the EPD info and let us know, where that is. We will go out there and we'll do an evaluation with either a speed sign or a stealth radar recorder, where we can get an idea of when the violations are taking place so that we can use our resources to the most efficient manner. So we will address those as they come, and we've been trying to do that up until now.
I appreciate that, and thank you for being here as well.
Yeah.
Certainly appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Yeah.
Just before you go,
Sure.
for those residents who are watching and or listening, how do they find the ways to contact you and or contact the department?
Sure. So the easiest way is to call it, call our number at 878-8331 and ask to speak to a supervisor or ask to speak to an officer. They will take the information about where the problem is going on. And then that information gets entered into a database so that all of the officers can see where the complaints have been and where they should be working. If they don't want to call, they can send an email to our EPD info link that's on our homepage, where it goes to myself, it goes to our lieutenant, and it goes to a couple of other people where that information will also get sent out. So there's a couple different ways, and even send us a message on Facebook. We do quite a bit of that as well. We get a lot of messaging on Facebook where we can also take a complaint like that.
That's great that you can take a picture of something on Facebook and message it to you guys or
Done
your
it
staff.
before. Several people have taken advantage of that.
That's awesome. And for the trustees, I just want to say again, I'm pretty sure I said this before, I highly encourage you to reach out to the chief, and please take the time to spend an evening, spend a few hours doing a ride along with the staff, with the officers. I've done that once so far, and it is an amazing opportunity. Highly recommend it. I think, Dan, you can probably get a pass on this one. You've done that a couple times in your own life.
Yeah. Can I just ask one question?
Yeah, that was my last point.
Just curious, I know that came up earlier from Andrew, a question on the race data, and going back, it's been 7 years since I was a trooper, but when we did maintain data with traffic stops, it's not actually what that individual is, it's what we perceive. Well, I say we as the law enforcement officer perceive them to be the race. So people in the public that may not know this, what the race data that they're seeing is what the officer perceived their race to be. So I think a lot of people out there aren't aware of this. I think many of my board members and many of the public. So just so you know that's the way it works. So if I looked at somebody and I thought they were Caucasian, they might have been Hispanic. They may have been African American. I don't know, but it's what I perceive it to be. So don't put all, you can't really look at everything and say that the numbers you see on race data is hard set. That's what, just as with anything, people could be biracial. You don't know what race necessarily they are. So it's what the perception of the officer is. Okay.
Could I just add to that? And as we all know with databases, the addition of info into that is the critical part. So to get the correct info. So over the last period of years, there has been trainings that have been done by the Vermont Police Academy that have been required of all officers in order to make better decisions when it comes to that. And how do you enter a Pacific Islander person or something like that? So they have entered, we're doing a better job, I think, in the last few years of entering that stuff.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief Logan. Thank you, Dan, for pointing that out as well. I had never heard that until now, so really appreciate that. Raj, go ahead.
You're muted.
That was a mistake. My trackpad is doing things on its own.
All right, trustees, any other questions? Okay, Chief, was there anything else or?
No, that's it. If you all don't have any other questions, that's all I had.
Great, I really do appreciate your time here tonight and the opportunity to answer questions.
You bet. And if anyone has specific questions in between, that feel free to contact me and I can get answers for you.
Greatly appreciate that. Thank you. All right, board. Just give me a moment so I can get the. Before we move on, is there anybody from the public who wished to comment on this tonight? And I just want to be cognizant. This is not necessarily a grilling opportunity of the chief. That is not what the intention of this is. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them. I just want to be cognizant as to what this is and what this is not. So if you'd like to ask a question, please go ahead. If you're using Microsoft Teams, raise your hand, use the chat feature. If you're not using Microsoft Teams, please go ahead, state your name so that we know you would like to speak. And the first hand that I see up is Annie Cooper. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Chief. Nice to see you. I don't know if this fits here, so stop me or just tell me I was wrong to bring it up. But there are two things that I have concerns about Maple Street, and about two traffic things that I'm throwing out there. And maybe this is wrong to say it, but it's I thought of it. On Maple Street frequently, not during the pandemic, but people will scoot around, like literally cross the double line and fly down the road just because they're tired of waiting. And like, I feel so frustrated, right? You can't do anything. So I don't know if you already talked about that, but I see that you know about it. I don't know what we do about it. I just wanted to say that I've seen it more than I would like.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. You're right, and that is why the signs were placed there to remind people not to do that, because it was such a problem. And I will say that I personally wrote a ticket for that about 6 months ago because I was sitting there in the line and had someone pass me. And unfortunately for them, I was driving an unmarked vehicle, so they didn't realize it. So, but yeah, that cost them quite a bit of money and a couple of points on their license for doing that. So I certainly understand your frustration with that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm thrilled, not thrilled to hear that it happened, but thrilled with your immediate situation. And so thank you. And then other thing, sorry, did I talk over you?
No.
The other thing is that on Main Street, when you're coming from 81 Main towards Five Corners, as you come up on Pleasant Street, there's a left-hand turn lane. In front of the left-hand turn lane, there's a crosswalk. Frequently, the left-hand turn lane car is sitting there. A child will start to cross, and then the person coming down the hill, the mild decline there,
I know what you're talking about.
Does not consider that crosswalk at all. And more than once, it's been terrifying for driver, child, and passing car. None of that has been me, just people have talked about it. So I don't know. Anyway, those are just two concerns and I don't know what to say about them. I just wanted to put them in your lap.
No, certainly understandable, and we see that a lot with pedestrian crossings, that people don't see the person who's getting ready to cross, or they're blocked by another vehicle or something like that. And sometimes that's about, like I said before, engineering the crosswalk. I mean,
Right.
some of the crosswalks currently have flashers and that type of thing, and that has to be justified, though. The expense of that has to be justified by the amount of use.
Oh,
It take a little bit of a study, because it is a bit of an expense to be able to put those flashing signs up there, and sometimes they do make things worse with too many lights. So.
sure. Well, maybe the first thing that I can certainly do is make a little noise amongst our community to talk about those things so that we're doing our job.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you. Thank
You
you
bet.
very much for your time.
You bet.
And is there anybody else from the public who wishes to speak on this item? Take that as a no. All right, Chief, we really do appreciate your time here tonight. Thank you for
bet.
this.
Thanks very much for listening to me. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Always happy to have you.
Thank you.
And so that will go ahead and bring us on to the agenda item of 6B, consideration of and possible action to modify the wastewater facility. You have just moved a screen on me. The capital plan from the wastewater facility.
Sorry, Andrew.
It's all good. You had no idea I was looking at that screen. And I believe we have, is Jim here to
Yes,
introduce
I
this
am.
for
Thank
us?
you.
Or? Right. Nice to have you
Yes,
here,
I
Jim.
am. Thank you for having me tonight. As I transmitted in the memo, we had an unfortunate situation arise. Some of the new equipment we bought with the 2014 upgrade of the facility upgrades that were completed in 2014. One particular piece of equipment, which is essentially the heart of the operation, has now some obsolete parts on it and cannot be rebuilt. It seems to happen a lot in the municipal sector. Doesn't make it acceptable, but at the same time, this manufacturer has offered a deeply discounted replacement because of the fact that they cannot maintain this piece of equipment in the future. So what I've presented here is a request for you folks to consider modifying the capital budget to allow us to take advantage of a discounted repair option or a core option, meaning we will trade in the old blower that is currently in service in about 50% through its life cycle, and we will replace it with a new blower that will be rebuildable in the future. It's being offered in a one-time discount that's carried through until December 31st this year. So it's either we take advantage of it or we face significantly higher costs for maintenance in another probably 4 to 6 years. And I've discussed this with Sarah from a finance perspective, and I was kind of on the fence as to whether we should take advantage of this on life cycle costs. But she supports going forward with this as well because it is a good deal and it is advantageous to take advantage of that change now and get the core value and the credits that they're offering at this time.
Thank you, Jim. I have a couple of questions on that. I'm not sure how did you get to that cost of it being about $55,000 when the item itself is being discounted to $17,000, and if I'm understanding it right, there's a near $27,000 credit.
Correct. I was going based off of their proposal, which shows a core on a different page. They even have to walk their salespeople through it the way it's presented. That's why at the very end, we were going to, I made a notation that we're going to continue to further scrutinize the cost and ensure that we are indeed getting the full applied discounts that we're due. There are shipping and installation costs and return shipping costs that we're going to be liable for as well. And again, the proposal itself is very confusing. They offered to walk through it every time we've brought this up for discussion.
So if the item itself is, I'll just for math's sake, is, let's just say 18,000. I see up top that there's a 1-day labor of 4,000.
Correct.
Is there a lower amount, say, let's say it's 2 days worth of labor, shipping and other costs that are unforeseen? 30,000 seems like maybe something that's a little more reasonable compared to the 55.
Correct. We put in the full amount just to make sure we had adequate funds to cover it. The installation swap out is approximately 1 day. Then they have to bill us for some time to essentially prove that they've disabled this core unit and cannot be reselling it. They have to physically damage it and prove it to the company, the manufacturer in Germany, for us to return and get that full core credit that they're offering. So there will be some delay in the funding and the reimbursement as well. And for that reason, again, we on the proposal, we overdid it. We went for the full amount, understanding that there would be a core credit of about 17,000 and some change.
Okay. That makes
So
my apologies for not presenting it a little more clearly.
no, it's okay. I just want to make sure that the way I read the memo is we're being asked to approve up to 55,000 when the numbers are not even adding up to about half of that. So that's why I'm.
Correct.
So would it make sense then to, instead of having it be 55,000, to lower that to not to exceed 30, or would that be pigeonholing you?
That would be fine, because if it doesn't cap me, I mean, that's an estimated cost. We have to wait for the actual invoicing to come through. So as long as we're not tied to go to a penny on that thing, we should be fine.
Okay. So those were my comments. I'm not sure if other trustees have comments, questions on this. Who was that? George, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to be clear on the conversation. So Andrew, what you're suggesting is dropping it down. Is that what you're recommending here?
Yes, that's what I was asking, is to cap the not to exceed to 30,000 instead of the 55.
Okay, but the 55 is a buffer because of the potential, because you got a lag from when you turn it in, and so that, I mean, I just don't want to I don't want to. I want to just sort of respect your reasoning, Jim and Sarah, that if you think that the additional 25,000 is just sort of a good safety buffer, I'd like to get your thoughts on that. I mean, in terms of the capital funds, Sarah, what does this do? Does this mean canceling some other capital project, or could you just sort of enlighten us a little bit about that?
I can do that just in a second.
Yep.
I think, the $55,000 acknowledges that we're gonna have to pay money out, and then we'll get money back.
Right.
And so that sort of the whole
Gotcha.
cycle of transactions.
That's a much better way to put it. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm 7 clicks away from the budget. Just a second.
She's never more than 7 clicks away.
7 clicks away. That's
I'm
a
already
lot.
4 folders through it.
All right.
3. There's a sufficient balance in the wastewater treatment facility capital reserve so that this does not have a negative impact on any other project.
Doing the 55, so that additional 25 is not going to. I'm trying to just get. And Andrew, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I didn't know if you were recommending that, or if you. I don't know what you had in mind. But I'd be. This seems. Jim. Here's my other question. What is? Can you describe what this piece of equipment does?
Okay, the piece of equipment is an aeration blower. We have 3 of them, 3 different sizes, to allow us to provide various demands for aeration for the treatment process. Again, it's 40% of the electricity that the facility uses, and it's one of the most critical parts of the operation that we have. And it was just disappointing to find out that it's not maintainable. Part of the reason we bought this equipment was the life cycle and serviceability of that equipment.
Okay.
So if I had to ID the most critical element of the process, it's this particular piece of equipment.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Sarah, too. Thank you.
So with my intention of the question, maybe the phrasing could have been better. How about a net cost not to exceed 30,000? So that way it still factors into the credit. If you need 55,000 to start this process, but if the net impact to the wastewater treatment plant doesn't exceed 30,000, then I think that would take care of that.
Correct.
Because ultimately, that's frankly where I'm coming from is if you have to spend 55 to then get the 27 discount, that's great. I just would hate to see you spend $55,000 for a $49,000 piece of equipment.
Right.
So George, does that help to answer?
Yeah, that's okay. I get you. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a couple of other questions. Jim, can you just inform what is the role of the Tri-Town in this process?
The Tri-Town is the funding mechanism for the wastewater facility, the 3 communities that we service, and each community contributes a proportional share to the capital fund, which is where this money would be coming from.
So the decision-making still relies here, but the...
Correct.
Okay. And then I remember we had tried to purchase a Super Sucker 5000, for lack of a better phrase, because of a grant opportunity that came up, and if I remember correctly, we were told we couldn't because of a foreign manufacturer or something like that. Are there any similar concerns that since the manufacturer is in Germany?
Not with this particular piece of equipment. That was a V-Trans Buy America criteria under the current administration, and this is completely different. There was no funding assistance from the state or federal government with the facility, unfortunately. We tried, but there was no assistance whatsoever. So we are free to do what's best for the facility and operation and with the approval of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you for that, Jim. And frankly, yeah, I'd rather do what's best for the facility and for our residents than have to, finagle some kind of process or some kind of machine that isn't
Right.
going to be the best thing possible.
Well, and from a life cycle cost, if we would have to replace this with a different piece of equipment, we would literally have to gut the blower room, pull out one of the other blowers, take down a wall, and we're looking at a project cost for a comparable size in probably $125,000 to $150,000 price range. So that's why going with the replaceable core that could be installed by somebody else in a day presents itself as a really viable financial option.
Makes sense. Trustees, any other questions? George, is your hand still up or is that a holdover?
Sorry, no, I'm taking it down.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the public before we move to vote on this? Again, if you're using Microsoft Teams, please raise your hand or use the chat feature to let us know you'd like to speak. If you're just calling in, go ahead and just state your name. All right, it appears there are no members of the public who wish to speak on this. So trustees, would anybody like to make a motion on this for the net not to exceed 30,000?
Andrew, I'm going to let you make the motion. Why don't you make the motion? Because I want to hear what you have in mind for this.
What is this? I thought it was my job to ask for the motion.
Yeah,
and you guys figure that stuff out. So I guess what I would say is that the wastewater facility capital fund be modified to add a replacement blower core in a not to exceed net cost to the village of $30,000. That's my motion. Would someone like to second my motion?
Second.
Thank you, Dale. Is there any further discussion on that?
I just want to make sure, again, that there's no trepidation on your part, Jim or Sarah, with this. Right? I mean, you're not expecting this to bounce back at you, and we're anticipating we're going to get the refund, right?
We won't proceed unless they guarantee the refund.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Any other comments from the board? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Oh, aye. I don't think I said anything. All right, that passed unanimously. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
And my understanding is you're coming right back here with business item 6C and the consideration of and possible action to enter professional services agreement and apply for grants for Densmore Drive and Brickyard culverts.
Correct. And again, thank you for having me tonight. We had this discussion with the Capital Committee with the exact same memo presented to them for their consideration. As we were doing the engineering work related to the FEMA failure of the downstream culvert on Densmore Drive adjacent to the doctor's office and pediatrician's office, part of that engineering evaluation was to look at major upstream culverts from both the structural integrity as well as a hydraulic flow analysis as part of the overall sizing of that replacement culvert. In doing that, the preliminary studies indicated that both the Densmore culverts and the Brickyard culvert immediately upstream from Densmore are marginally sized for the flow from the stream and also are in early stages of failure. The engineers estimated that we'll be okay to continue with the culverts as they are through the reconstruction of the failed Densmore Drive culvert. But at the same time, we're starting preliminary work for replacement of those two upstream culverts as well. And that's the request to you. Number one, part of the request was for a permission to apply for a grant. And after the Capital Committee meeting, we proceeded with the engineering company to do that grant application. The reason being it was a relatively small amount and they agreed that the funding would be under the capital project for the Densmore Drive culvert. We had preliminary feedback from the agency today that we are going to have a meeting regarding the grant funding for this opportunity for this upstream culvert. So the application was received favorably and there's a good chance there will be grant funding to help offset the cost for the second culvert. So that's a work in progress and that's presented in page 2 of the memo. It's the Municipal Highway Stormwater Mitigation Program grant. We don't have a final amount yet, but it has been received and accepted, and they are discussing the details with us. The second part of the memo is not just to try to secure grants, but to start the engineering so that the sequence of construction and could follow the completion of the failed culvert that failed during the Halloween storm last year. So with the engineering firm doing work on one project already and under the FEMA grant, and this second culvert also using some of the very same engineering analysis and design work, it makes all the sense in the world for an economy of scale to try to use the same engineering firm rather than go out and solicit bids and have somebody start from scratch. So I'm here to ask for the trustees to consider authorization for the manager to sign the professional services agreement with Hoyle, Tanner and Associates as a sole source to continue with the design of the second Densmore Drive culvert.
Thank you, Jim. Now, how did that, you mentioned that this memo was also presented to the Capital Committee, and I believe that they met either last week or a couple of weeks ago. How did that process go?
They basically, and Sarah can back it up, she was in on that meeting as well, but they concurred that it makes sense that these projects all fall under one, even though they seem to be separate projects. They are all part of what was originally the Densmore Drive reconstruction project. And getting financial assistance for these replacement culverts will certainly help lower the cost of that reconstruction over time. And it's still a priority project.
And I would assume that this information would then also increase that the financing score that this item would have received in the scoring rubric, which should have increased its the time in which it, or decrease the time in which it should be replaced.
Yeah, Andrew, I can tell you, we re-ranked Densmore in February before we even knew about additional potential funding, and it is 40 points higher than anything else on that list. So we're just continuing ahead with that score instead of re-ranking it higher and higher each time. It's got to go. We're going for it with your permission, of course.
Good call. And so then along those lines, I totally forgot where I was going to go with that. So well done, Sarah. Amber, I see that your hand is up. Why don't you go ahead and save me on this one?
I was just going to confirm what Sarah said. I mean, we and Jim said, we did have a discussion about this at the Capital Committee meeting last week. And there was some discussion about re-ranking. We decided not to re-rank for what the reason Sarah said. I mean, it really couldn't go any further. It's number one. So it's kind of not really worth all of our time to re-rank it. In addition, we did have a discussion about splitting projects out, but decided against that. So we kept it as one project. So.
Great. That sounds good. What are the impacts that this would have on the capital projects further down the list? And don't all jump at once to answer that question.
That's a
I have
Sarah
to answer
question.
that question. So I don't have the specific in front of me, but we also talked about making a couple changes to a few other projects, and that really allows for funding to be freed up now that has a minimal impact on the plan, or like the planned timeline of the upcoming projects. So I can't remember exactly what those are, but it's sort of a something about South Street drainage, and sort of that gets plunked out and reevaluated through a new lens in the coming months, years. And this one is able to slip in, and everything may just shuffle a little bit, but nothing really noticeable.
Great. Trustees, any other questions on this?
I don't have a question. I just a general sense, Jim. I mean, the whole area worries me. I'm wondering what your thought is. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, are we going to be dealing with this again? It looks. I mean, it's almost like we're trying to contain a body of water that's uncontainable, and struggling with it, and the future prediction for things like this is not rosy. I'm not saying I'm very much in favor. I'm going to say I'm in favor of going ahead with all this, but I'm just, since we're on the subject, it is concerning when I walk over there. I see all the water that's moving in many different directions. It's a massive engineering accomplishment that we've got going over there, and it looks like it's not done.
And I think to a degree you're correct, but I'd like to remind you that we replaced the Mansfield Avenue culvert about 10 years ago,
right,
utilizing some B-Trans structures grants.
Right.
What we're trying to do is complete, if you recall, going back when several of you were on the board, when we had some stimulus money come through, we used a pipeline assessment protocol to rank the pipelines and culverts that needed the greatest amount of work in the sewage collection system. That allowed us to address the highest priorities without addressing systems that didn't necessarily need repair. We're carrying that same process forward to culverts and road crossings here in the village. Okay. But unfortunately, we're just starting the process. Okay. So Halloween storm accelerated one of the processes that we had started with Densmore. We had already scoped out replacement of the culvert, but then the failure came within like 6 months. So we couldn't really advance to the next step. We're trying to continue expanding our evaluation of the other road crossings and major culverts to make sure that we don't have any surprises like that come up again with catastrophic failure. So right now, the big ones are the Halloween storm on Lower Densmore. This one we've identified on Upper Densmore, and then the Brickyard Road culvert, which we will be coming back to you with that in the future. But right now, we're just giving you the point of awareness that is something that we are working on, and we will be back in touch.
Okay. Thank you.
I just realized I'm muted. There's a lot of feedback coming in from somebody on the line who does not have their phone muted. If you are not trying to speak, could you please mute your microphone? Sounds like you might be trimming your hedge. Thank you. Or the dishes are breaking.
Someone's in the kitchen.
If there's a Dinah on the line, please. Sorry, I couldn't pass that one up. So in general, if you're not intending to speak on the meeting right now, please do have your microphone muted. The amount of feedback coming through is distracting, and frankly, it's not helping to get us through the meeting. So trustees, any other questions or comments on this item before we open it up to public comment? Amber, your hand is up. Is that a holdover?
Holdover, sorry.
No worries. All right. So seeing that there are no other questions from board members, let us turn. Now that there are no other questions from board members, let's turn this over to the public. And are there any other questions on this matter before we make a motion to vote on it? I see no hands being raised. I see no chat in the chat box, and nobody has voice that they would like to speak. So I will take that as no members from the public wish to speak on this item. Would one of the trustees like to make a motion? And my assumption is it's recommendation 3.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'm happy to do it. I'll make a motion that the trustees authorize the unified manager to sign the agreements for professional services with Hoyle, Tanner, and Associates, and approve staff to apply for grants to offset capital costs.
Second.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Amber. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, and Chelsea as well. Really appreciate the hard work of you and your staff. And Sarah,
Thank you
of
very
course,
much
as
for your consideration of this.
Thanks.
We all appreciate it.
Thank you.
Maybe we can mute her.
You cannot.
Somebody.
Well, let's see if that comes back up again. And that brings us into 6D, a discussion about out and about.
That is mine. You have a memo in your packet for the people watching tonight. The village and the town worked together. They both each got a state grant of $10,000 each to do a project that infused money into local economy. So we picked a project that we had just done, which was called Outside and Open. Now we've rebranded it as Out and About. That is going to be this upcoming weekend, October 17th and 18th. One of the requirements of the grant was it needed to be done before, I believe, not only done, but submitted before November 30th. So we're hoping for good weather this weekend. We are providing $15 vouchers per household, and those vouchers are split into one $5 voucher and one $10 voucher, for which people can go to 75 Maple on a first come, first serve basis and get those vouchers. Those vouchers are redeemable only on October 17th and 18th at participating businesses, both in the village and the town, outside of the village. And they are going to have music and entertainment on both of those days, roughly between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. Trying to make it a family-friendly event, socially distant, but also to help our local businesses who have suffered through COVID and declines in their business during that period that we have. Let's see, we did purchase a banner that is changeable in terms of the date. So one of the things we did that for is we're hoping this is going to be successful and look to do this event more than once a year. So we bought a banner that could be kept and put over the dam, which by the way is on the consent agenda for approval from the board to put it up. So hopefully that goes well for us. We have a lot of bands and entertainment, not just bands, but we have some very kid-friendly entertainment. And again, this is working with the town as well as the village. So we are going to have these entertainment spots put in a couple different spaces. I know there's going to be one out in front of Firebird, one at McGillicuddy's, one out at On Tap, and then up in the town, I know there's going to be one outside of Mimo's / Cody's and the Essex Experience. So the rest is in the memo. Happy to answer any questions.
This sounds great, and I appreciate the opportunity to get a grant for this and really modeled after what the village did just a month or so earlier, which is always fantastic.
So much so that the state used us as that model to other communities and said you could do what Essex Junction just did, and you probably would get approved.
We're such great innovators here in the village. Do great work. Thank you for that. So a couple of questions. How do households get those $15 vouchers? Do they just show up to 75 Maple Street whenever they feel like? Is there a certain time of day?
There are set hours. They're on our website. But yes, as long as you bring a proof of your residency, whether that's a driver's license, some type of utility bill, something that has your name on it and your address, either in the village or in the town outside of the village, you can get your coupons.
So regardless as to where you live in the town of Essex, whether it's within the village or outside the village, you go to 75 Maple Street.
Between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
Great, and I assume that that's on the website, as you had said?
Yes.
And then is there also a list of the businesses and the acts that are happening, or the entertainment?
Yes. The funny part of it is the list of businesses keeps growing. So if you don't happen to see the business, that it could be in process. But we have lots of businesses signed up, both in the village and the town, over 40 of them.
Nice. That's fantastic. And are there any restrictions on those vouchers?
Yes, sir, there are. Almost like we practiced this. We do not allow the use of vouchers on alcohol or tobacco products.
Gotcha. And so now that I've killed that, do other trustees want to go next? And let's see, George, I think your hand was up first, and then Raj.
I'm just going to make an observation. I think this is great. My congratulations to everyone involved for putting this out. I think it's fantastic. Totally support it. The only thing I just question, and I know when we did out and about, open and outside rather, the picking up of the vouchers was a very limiting factor, and I'm going to guess you're going to get the same thing here. If you're saying you want to give away $15,000 worth of, you're going to need to have 1,000 people show up at 75 Maple Street, and I'll be surprised if you get that. I would just, if you could, it's probably too late now, but you might want to think of expanding, having a couple of other locations around the village and town, but maybe you can't do that, or maybe it's too strategically too difficult. But I think you know what I'm saying. It's going to be tricky getting 1,000 people to, even 500 people showing up at 75 Maple. Hopefully that will happen.
We struggled with that, but because it's late in the season, and moving it back a week just starts making it colder and wetter and or snowier. So we are actually going to talk tomorrow about alternatives for what happens if we don't give out enough of the vouchers.
Yeah, I mean, I only want to say it's like I think for open and outside, I hate to say it, but we didn't give away enough money. I wish we had sort of set aside a lot more money to kind of give a little boost to local businesses. And I felt bad that some of them just, only wound up with not very much money. So you do want to really try to push that out there. So,
but
yeah,
it's an interesting balance between making a voucher that's accessible but not reproducible.
yeah, I know.
So, okay.
Okay.
We will get better. We've already gotten better at this. We will continue to get better at this. For the public, have some faith in us. We have a fantastic committee of people working on this now. Robin Pierce, Owiso Makuku from the town.
Yeah.
We have Tammy and Linda and Brad, Allie. I just involved Dennis from Town PW and Ricky from Village PW. So we are going after this, and we are looking to get it better and better and do this on an annual basis. Maybe not the voucher money, but at least the entertainment and the idea.
Sounds good.
All right, Raj.
Amber, you were next.
I was just going to ask if
Or
there's a
Raj.
way to kind of go along with what George was asking. He kind of stole my thunder on that.
Sorry,
but
Raj.
it's okay. It's cool. It's not that big a deal. If there's a way for people to pick up for their neighbors 4 hours a day during a work day with everything going on, I'm a little surprised that we can't use the joint. We're not using the register for a class tool and using a receipt to show up and pick up tickets, for instance, at a booth at both. I'm just, this is a phenomenal effort, and I've seen and understand and can totally grasp the amount of work that's going into this, and I'm thrilled, pleased as punch. But I'm just wondering,
Yeah, we'll do our best. We're
I
gonna
get
meet
it.
tomorrow. We're gonna meet tomorrow. That's all I got. That's all I got available right now is.
No, I get it. That's cool. It's
Gotcha,
fine.
Gotcha. It's
No,
good. We're not complaining.
No, it's
No,
not a
I
complaint,
get
and it's in hopes, like, if you're going to reproduce this, which I hope we certainly get to do, that we figure out a way to simplify it.
And here's the thing. I think what we would like is 2 or 3 times a year scheduled early in, like we already create the schedule and then work our way back on dates. So this is just kind of rushed together because we got the state money and it needed to be used by November 30th.
Yep. Totally appreciate it.
We also decided to work with the CVE. They have their event this weekend. We figured people would be in town. And so with our music and entertainment, we're hoping some of the people that go to CVE for their food event will come and patronize some of our businesses this weekend.
Amber, you're up.
I was just going to piggyback off that and say, yeah, I kind of struggled with the same thing. I'm working between those hours, and so how to get my vouchers. But I noticed that there was a comment, maybe it was on Front Porch Forum, I can't remember where I saw it at this point, that said if you needed to make a different accommodation, that you could email Parks and Rec. I haven't tried that out yet, so I don't know what that means. I don't know what it entails, but I think for folks, if you're struggling with trying to figure out how to get the vouchers during that time period, maybe reach out to Parks and Rec and see if there's something else that they can do to accommodate you.
Yep. We will try everything we can. I think even maybe even trying to put a table out near Five Corners and maybe out in the town, and we'll figure something out. We have some pretty good minds, mine not included.
all of you have been fantastic on this. This is going to be this is going to be wonderful. Really looking forward to it. And I also appreciate how it hasn't just been staff. I see that Annie Cooper has also volunteered her time to help pull this together. So again, really appreciate our community volunteers stepping up and helping out in this effort. So Annie, again, I appreciate what you're doing and your help.
I really appreciate the camaraderie and work that the town employees and the village employees have put in on this. They really collaborated well. No territories, just let's make this the best we can make it in such a short time. And everybody, just bent a little and gave a little and worked it out. And thanks to Allie and Brad, who have put in a lot of their staff time as well. So fingers crossed, good weather, Saturday, Sunday. Spend a lot of money in town, please.
Nice little plug there. Are there any? So now we can turn this over for public comment. If there are any questions or comments from the public on this item, same process as before. Raise your hand if you're using Teams. Go ahead and use the chat feature if you're using Teams. If not, just let us know who you are and if you want to chat. I see we have a hand up from Irene Renner. Go ahead, you can unmute yourself and have at it.
Thank you, Andrew. I recall years ago at the block party, there was a sort of central location. I don't know if it was a ticket booth per se, but I'm wondering if there's just some way that even if just for the first couple hours each day of the event, you could actually have someone there with a computer. I know Indian Brook passes are checked in real time or used to be with a little machine. Is there some way people could pick up vouchers at the event? Because I think that would take advantage of people's spur of the moment ability to go somewhere and then be able to get their vouchers on the spot. Thank you.
Sure, we could look at that.
Other members of the public? I don't see any new hands. Irene, is that a holdover?
Yes, I'll pull it down. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Trustees, unless there's anything else, I don't believe we have any motions involved with this, no decisions. This was just a discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that will bring us on to business item 6E and the discussion of public outreach for the merger plan and the vote. Evan, did you want me to take this? Or?
Well,
I can take it. You want to take it?
It's kind of self-explanatory, but sure. You take over, sir.
I'll make this one short. So we approved amount to not to exceed 8,000 for advertising, for mailings, for those types of things. You can see what we have done. We knew that the mailer, the newsletter that went out was going to be about 3,000 to 4,000 or so. We weren't sure about the video. The video ended up coming in at 2,200. So since we had that overall not to exceed of 8,000, and we have spent a little over 6 on that, we could spend some money to do something else, or we could choose not to and just have that money be used for other purposes, or to just not use. Given all that we have done at this point in time, personally, I don't have any burning desire to do anything different. I don't have a burning desire to do anything new. I think we've done a really good job so far of making sure people are informed. Clearly, there's a little more work we can do around making sure that people understand that the second ballot that they receive is intentional. As Evan had said before, the clerk's office is reaching out to them when they mail them back to residents with that little note saying, hey, this is actually legitimate, please fill this out. But trustees, if you have any other questions, comments, thoughts, we have that little bit left over that we could use or not. Amber, was your hand up to speak, or is it a holdover from before?
It was a holdover, but I will just comment that I think we've done enough. I agree with you, Andrew, that we can just hold on to the balance of the money and use it for something else. Cookies the next time we get together.
There we go.
It's a lot of cookies.
Yeah, I'll go for the $1,800 worth of cookies. George?
Yeah, I agree with Amber and you. I think we should just hold on to the money. I think we've done a lot. We got a pretty big turnout tonight, but we didn't get any questions. And I'm going to say I wasn't surprised. I don't have a feeling that there's a huge amount of drama bubbling beneath the surface over merger in the village right now. I could be completely wrong, and we could be surprised, but I think that probably the most important thing is just making sure that we really, with Front Porch Forum and Facebook, really advertise the next public hearing on October 27th. And then I'm going to switch gears and say, I do think it's a good idea for us to have booths during the Out and About event. For us to answer questions and rub elbows with the public. And I actually am wondering, bringing Irene's comment in, I wonder if we could also be handing out vouchers. That might be sort of kill two birds with one stone, but I'll just sort of throw that concept out there and I'll stop talking. Thanks.
And of course, George, you mean a social distance elbow rub, right?
Absolutely, of course. I absolutely.
Yep. Evan, has there been any movement on that?
I'm sorry, movement?
Movement on the booth thing.
Just tell us you want it and we'll set one up.
Okay.
But we also need people to sit there.
So we want that. Could you send out a doodle or some other kind of polling feature to figure out who can be there?
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I don't think you need to be out there 10 hours a day, or 7 hours each day, but maybe something like noon to 3 or 4, while it's light out, something like that. Sound okay?
Yep.
I think so. Dan, I see your hand is up.
Yes. As we started out, there was $15,000 to each community for this, right? Is that correct? 10,000 to each? Okay. So when we're handing out vouchers, just not saying, there's going to be fraud here, but somebody commented earlier about trying to, prevent somebody from duplicating the voucher itself. I think Evan might have said it, but anyhow, how we assuring, I should say, that multiple people from the same household aren't getting vouchers? How are we to make sure that someone doesn't go to the rec department, pick up a voucher, someone else then go back to the booth on wherever, Main Street or Railroad Avenue, wherever it would be, and pick up another voucher? So just the duplication aspect of it.
Evan, is this something you have an answer for?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we had people, when they go to 75 Maple, they have to give us their proof of address. We mark them off. When we go off-site, we have to bring that information with us. And so that's what we will end up having to do, is bring our address lists and make sure that they're not being duplicated. So it's a process. That's why it's a lot easier doing it in the office when we're on computers versus printouts in the field. But again, at the end of the day, we really do want to pump out all the money to go out to our businesses. So we will find a way. In fact, I know that Annie is working with Tammy, who's working with Brad on this. So I will check in with them tomorrow as to what that plan is, and they know the drill. They know that that's the goal. Get all the money out.
Go ahead, George.
I want to bring up just another thing I just noticed, Andrew, just this evening, when we had our public hearing on the merger, and then there weren't any questions. We discussed it, you went over, and I don't know how many people we had altogether. It was over 30. And then we ended it and then started talking about the traffic issues with Chief Hogue. And I saw one after another people joining the meeting at that point. I don't know how many joined. I lost track. They were coming in, and I'm going to guess that a lot of them were tuning in to the public hearing on merger, but they were showing up 15 minutes too late. And I'm going to suggest that maybe for our next public hearing, maybe schedule it, give a little bit of buffer time, put something else on the agenda for the first 15 or 20 minutes, just to anticipate that some people might be not able to join right at 6:30. And if they're not here and we end early, then 6:45, within 15, 20 minutes, the hearing's over and more people are joining. And so, maybe we want to have it at 7 o'clock or something like that. Just something to consider.
Yeah, along those lines, I'm not going to be at that meeting. I think I had said that during our last meeting. So George,
that's right. Okay,
if you wanted at 7, that's up to you, man.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's what we're doing. All right.
If you want to do it at 8, you can do it at 8.
No, 7's good. 7's good. Thanks.
Great. Now that we're getting distracted a little bit, why don't we turn this over to the public for public comment? And Annie, I see that your hand is up.
Hi, I'm only a volunteer, and the real the movement and the push and the strength in this out and about in Essex event is the conjoined departments and the things that Evan was describing. But the lessons learned, George, by you and my, by the first setup, Robin and Tammy and Evan brought to this event. So there's a beautiful logo that Linda Mann's designed that, I don't know if you've seen it. There's a full out Facebook page. There's a huge outreach to the community. It's a very, very professional undertaking by all the joint departments. And so I think maybe you'll be very pleasantly surprised at what that looks like. I was a little surprised by your guys' reaction, but I guess it's because you maybe haven't seen the Facebook page or don't know about how well it's going. And to Dan's thought, yes, absolutely, Dan, the gift vouchers are being created so that they cannot be duplicated, and
right.
All the businesses are fully under awareness of what they're supposed to look like when they receive them. And so it feels like, I mean, just the logo alone, the professionalism of Linda Mann's making that logo, like it's just, and Tammy's making the vendor page, like it looks like, I feel like it's amazing what the staff has done, and watching the departments work together and be together. And it's just, I don't mean to go on so much, but it's so exciting. And so I'm so grateful to be allowed to volunteer with it, but you guys should know that I feel that all of your concerns are, and Amber, yes, do try that phoning or asking if they can get your vouchers to you, because they absolutely will provide. So thanks for letting me talk, you guys, and thanks for letting me.
Good job, Ian. Yep.
Thank you, Annie. We do appreciate it. If there's anybody else from the public who wish to speak on this item, go ahead, raise your hand, type it in the chat feature, or if you're not using Microsoft Teams and you're calling in, please go ahead and just say your name and that you'd like to speak. feel like a radio host when I say that. Call in now. All right, so I'm not seeing any other hands being raised. There's no comments in the chat window, and nobody has said that they would like to speak. So that could move us along from business item 6E into the consent agenda.
I will make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Great. Which brings us into the reading file and board member comments. If the board is okay, instead of going right into board member comments, George, to your point about if people had joined the merger public hearing late, if the board would like, we could take additional questions if anyone has questions, or we can just have individuals watch the meeting, the recording of the meeting on YouTube or through channel 17, or we could just have them wait until the 27th. What would the board's pleasure be on that?
I'd be okay with them taking extra questions if anyone has extra questions now. I think a lot of them have left though.
Fine with me.
All right. So we can go ahead, and if there are members from the public who had a question on merger that they didn't get to ask before, if you joined in late and didn't get to hear the details, go ahead and ask a question. We'll do our best to answer. Same process, raise your hand if you're using Microsoft Teams, or type into the chat feature that you'd like to speak. Or if you're just calling in, please go ahead and state your name and that you'd like to talk. Annie, I'm assuming, or I don't want to assume, Annie, is your hand up as a holdover, or is that a fresh one?
It's a holdover. I couldn't get the screen back to fix it when you said my name.
No worries.
I always felt like I was back in Holy Name of Jesus Elementary School reading the book, and I was supposed to do
Something you want to share with the whole class?
Okay.
I'm not seeing any hands. I'm not seeing any comments. Nobody's chiming in. Again, if you do have questions, please go to essexjunction.org. You will see right smack in the middle of the page a link for merger information, and there's a lot of details in there. At the top of the Essex Junction website page is a little, I think it's a green colored button that says connect with the trustees. Go ahead and click on that, and that can send you to a page that has all of our email addresses. Please email us if you have questions. We're really happy to answer those questions. We want to make sure that when village residents go and vote on merger, that you're understanding what you're voting for. Kathy Ainsworth.
I
Go
just
right
wanted
ahead.
to say that I also saw the little video that's posted on your website this morning, and it's adorable, and it gives a lot of information, and I think that would be a really good thing for people to watch as well.
Thank you for that feedback, Kathy. That's greatly appreciated. Okay. So I just see that in the chat there was somebody who had asked a question, and now it's being answered. Great. Okay, so why don't we bring that back now and go into other board member comments. Is there anything anybody wants to talk about that we haven't already talked about tonight? I will take the silence and no hands from the trustees to be a no. One thing I do want to point out is within the winter operations plan, I noticed that there was I think the phrase that was used was a doomsday scenario about what happens if our public works staff and our plowing staff get sick with either the flu or COVID or what have you. I highly encourage the boards and members of the public to take a quick glance at that. It's a bit of a realization that, in many regards, our public works staff are first responders. They help to make sure that our streets, our sidewalks are safe for us to drive on before many of us even wake up, and maintained throughout the day so that we can get to work, we can get to school, we can get our way back home after, we go to the grocery store, we can pick up our prescriptions, we can do all the things that we need to do. One thing I really was curious on, I noticed that it was mentioned that public works staff in the past have worked while they have the flu. In general, I just want to share a philosophical stance. I really hope that none of our staff have to work when they have the flu. And I hope that that is just a choice that maybe one individual made at some point in time to work when they were sick, which I really hope people aren't doing, especially right now. So I just want to share that with, frankly, Evan, mostly with you, just for you to relay that to whoever else needs to hear it.
And if you don't mind, we don't encourage people coming in when they're sick, but they have a sense of duty, and they understand that people rely on them. The other problem is that when they don't come in, we don't have extra drivers. So there's X amount of routes, X amount of drivers. And if someone doesn't come in, then that route has to be picked up as part of someone else's route. So again, we don't encourage that they do it. They just understand that people are counting on them. And if they do have a severe cold and they feel that it is going to impair their driving, they are not to drive. The issue with COVID and the flu, as anybody who's been watching the news or any TV over the last, say, 3 or 4 weeks, is a lot of the symptoms of the flu or a cold mimic some of the symptoms or many of the symptoms of the onset of COVID. And so one of the things that we are very mindful about is the staging of our crews and the separation of our crews, so that if one person regrettably, horribly will get COVID, that doesn't infect the entire staff. And therefore, we are able to put together as many people to do plow and sidewalk routes on a daily basis. The other very tough part is they usually start their routes at about 2 to 3 a.m. There's very little way for us to tell the public whether we are or we aren't full staff that day. And so what we ask of people is, if it seems like we're backed up or we haven't gotten to your street yet, check our website, call our winter operations number, and we will get back to you as to what our status is for that day. But it's really, it's going to be an interesting winter, and we hope that our staff and many, as well as our residents, stay healthy. But it's just going to be an interesting several months of getting through winter.
Absolutely. Evan or other staff, any other questions or comments, or are we ready to giddy up on out of here?
I vote for giddy up out.
Yeah.
All right. Hearing a TV going on in the background, so I'll take that as if a trustee wants to go ahead and make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Amber. Is there any further discussion on adjourning tonight? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, that's unanimous. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Raj looks young.
Good night.